Good morning, everyone. Today's Wednesday, November 13th. I'm John Weigell with Mark Dent, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. How many times have you unsubscribed and resubscribed to a streaming service? The same one. Data from Antenna says that if you did, you're part of at least 11% of streaming service users. This subscription pausing phenomenon is running rampant, and today we have a bunch of data to assess exactly how much it's really happening. But before that, let's give you the hits and headlines today in business and tech. Today we start off with Disney. Disney is looking for a new CEO to replace Bob Iger. One potential candidate named is Electronic Arts CEO Andrew Wilson. They have a lot of lead time on this, though, as the company plans to announce their successor to the throne in early 2026. So a lot of time on hand. Mark, what are your thoughts on Disney picking a new CEO?
For the new CEO, I feel like it's going to be a good situation because it was a really bad situation when they replaced Bob Iger the first time.
Yeah.
So it's like there's no way that can happen again, right? Like he can't come back a second time. You know, we're going to be talking later about how this is a tough business for entertainment and streaming, of course. So whoever gets it, it's going to be tough. Bob Iger is one of those CEOs that everybody knows that name.
Right. Exactly. And, whoever's coming into this position is probably going to have to ramp up a lot of different things and change a lot of things about their business because, looking at their stock, despite the big boom in 2021, they've kind of leveled out to about an even playing field. So I think they're looking for someone to shake things up.
And potentially shake up Marvel. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that whole thing.
So it can continue to be a cash cow and not have the, somewhat middling, at least by Marvel standards, results that they've seen some of in the last year.
Yeah, which, my opinion, they deserve. Too many superhero movies. It's just too many.
I agree. Way too many.
Next, the private messaging app you may know, Signal, just got video capabilities. They've officially added video calls, link capabilities, reactions, and a calls tab, making them a sturdy competitor for video call giants like Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams. Check it out. Next, some interesting news for your air purifier and that really tiny room heater that warms 1 foot at a time. Elliot Investment Management just built an over $5 billion stake in Honeywell and is pushing the company to break up. Elliott partners cite, quote, uneven execution, inconsistent financial results, and an underperforming share price as reasons for the breakup, which, ouch, those hurt. Okay, moving from there to Hertz. Rental car company Hertz is hurting quite a bit. The company placed a big bet on Teslas and EVs in late 2023, and that strategy didn't really work. So now they're hoping to sell 30,000 EVs by the end of 2024 and lower their fleet to a number that consumers actually want to rent. I guess it's all chalked up to consumers just not really wanting to rent an electric vehicle from Hertz nowadays.
I don't really understand what Hertz was thinking in the first place here with thinking there'd be this massive rush to rent an EV. The major advantages of having an electric vehicle are you might save some money in the long run on not paying for gasoline. You might feel like you're doing things better for the environment, but you're renting a car usually for a couple of days. Yeah. And so those concerns are out of mind. What you're thinking about is how inexpensive is this largely? Sure. Or perhaps you just need a certain type of car. I was also talking to my Uber driver a few months ago who had rented one of the Tesla's new Cybertrucks.
Oh, yeah.
And she really enjoyed the truck itself. But what she didn't like was that as someone who was renting the vehicle, she had to charge it up. I think she had it for a couple of days and she was driving a lot of miles, of course. Oftentimes when you rent a car, you're in a different city or you probably don't own an EV to begin with. So you don't really understand the logistics and where those charging stations are.
Yeah.
And so I just don't see how it makes any sense to rent an electric vehicle.
The last few times I've rented cars, they actually tried to cut me some deals for EVs. They were like, are you sure you don't want an EV? We'll give you a bit of a discount. We'll do some stuff. We'll throw in some promotions.
They'd love to do that.
They want me to take them. And I always refuse. Not that I, don't love the environment and stuff, but I actually have never driven an EV before. And last year I rented a Model 3 and it was super cheap from Hertz, actually. And a few days before I panicked because I was like, I don't know where the charging stations are. What do I do with this thing?
I know.
I don't even know how to drive this thing. And then I panicked and switched to a different car. So, I guess that's also a pain point. Maybe people who haven't ever driven them before may not want to drive them, especially if they're on vacation and they have to learn a whole new UI for a car.
Yeah.
Just from personal experience. That's what I think.
It's like a time when you want to enjoy yourself. And even if you're a business traveler, which is a huge part of their business as well, like, business travelers, they want to just get in and get out and kind of do their thing. Like they're often not in the mood for experimenting either.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And finally here, you might have not known this, but there's a National Toy Hall of Fame. And this week, 3 toys were inducted out of 12 finalists after receiving the most votes from a panel of experts and the public. I would like to be on that panel of experts, by the way. Do you know which toys got in the top 3? Stick around, we'll reveal that in the bottom of the 9th of the pod right after the main story. And speaking of, we've arrived at the main story, and today we're diving into some data about pausing streaming services. And my first question for you, Mark, is have you ever paused and recontinued a streaming service before?
That's a really good question. I've had Netflix pretty much continuously for the better part of 12 years. Hulu, I think I've gotten free as an add-on with Spotify. And Peacock.
Yeah.
I tend to cancel that one in the summer when the Premier League is off, because that's what I usually watch it for.
Makes sense.
So yes, I am one of them.
Yeah, I'm also a Peacock flip-flopper. Anytime WrestleMania comes around, I get on that and then immediately get off it right afterwards. And I've done it with Apple TV Plus, but apparently a lot of people are just like us, a couple ne'er-do-wells over here who just keep subscribing to these services and keep turning off. But something you did mention there was that you've had Netflix consistently, and you kind of fit very much in line with what all this data shows today that we're going to talk about. Yeah,
I mean, I think like Netflix just seems like the home screen, or back when people were more likely to use cable, it's what you'd go and you'd check and you'd flip through the channels and you kind of flip through Netflix and maybe you find something. So it's, it was the first mover and therefore people are sticking there. But, as you mentioned, people in general aren't just sticking around because, you think of all these different streamers like Amazon Prime, HBO Max, Hulu, Peacock, like we mentioned. And then there's, of course, even, more niche streamers like Shudder. And you can't just have all of them all the time. And so what the Wall Street Journal found to kind of like back up this idea of people who just kind of switch and then come back is that they found that in this most recent year is that the median percentage of streaming video subscribers who would rejoin after canceling within the same prior year was 34% so far this year. And that's up from about 30% in 2022. So, I mean, not a huge jump, but it just backs up the fact that a lot of people are churning, so to speak, but coming back.
Yeah. I mean, this data also comes from Antenna. It's been kind of being analyzed like all across the internet. And it reveals kind of a lot of interesting things, exactly like you just mentioned. It also says that the average rate of U.S. consumer cancellations on premium streaming video services reached 5.2% in August. But after you factor in the resubscribers, the rate of defections was actually 3.5%. So people are dipping in and out of these services all the time, especially this year. I'd be interested to see the data when the year concludes.
What I think is interesting is these numbers kind of go against a trend of what the streamers have been doing. And that's the trend of them spending less on original content compared to a few years ago. Right. They famously dropped it down a little bit after the sort of big rush during COVID when more people were watching and their stock prices were higher. But, basically to keep people subscribed, to ensure that they don't go away, you have to just keep coming out with new things.
Yeah.
And now the streamers want to make fewer new things because it's expensive and because, they've been getting hammered. None of them, with the exception of Netflix, have been consistently profitable.
Yeah.
So to me, it just seems like this is a problem that they aren't going to be able to fix because the only way they'd be able to fix it is with greater investments, and there's no guarantee that it would pan out.
And it's not just that they have to come out with new things. It's that they got to come out with shiny new things, like things that people really, really want to watch. That kind of brings us to these streaming services just getting rights to sports games, Netflix getting the rights to WWE, like all these kind of live event plays that these companies are doing in order to keep those viewers and keep them at the ready. Because the only reason that a lot of cable companies still have subscribers is for sports.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. And just wild to think that the lifeline for cable may become the lifeline for a streamer. And, you just mentioned, of course, WrestleMania, and I had mentioned the English Premier League earlier. I think the issue that they may get into with that, though, is how many consistent sporting rights are up for grabs. Because is Netflix gonna, bid for the NBA next time? But the problem is next time is like more than a decade from now.
Yeah.
Those rights deals just happened. I think the NFL comes down the pike a little bit sooner. But, Thursday Night Football is fairly popular for Amazon, but it doesn't get as many views as even as a big Sunday afternoon game often gets on network TV. So, I do think that those are consistent ways to keep people coming back and not unsubscribing. But sports seasons always end. So that's a reason to end your subscription. And like I said, there's only so much that people I think will really be attracted to pay for streaming for. Like, I don't think baseball is that. I don't think like the odd NBA game is that.
Yeah.
There are only a few sports that really capture people's attention enough.
Yeah, very much so. And something else like that I've also been noticing is that a lot of these streaming services have ad tiers for free or very, very minimal price. Like Netflix has their ad tier, and they actually just said that 70 million viewers are watching its shows with ads every month. And that doubles the total from May of this year. So a lot more people are just hopping on these services, maybe at a lower rate or at a free rate, to see the content that they want to see. But now is when we get into cable streaming bizarro world, where it seems the same themes are kind of recurring in that now you have sports over here, now you have this over here, you have live events over here, and now you're going to have ads if you don't pay a certain amount.
I mean, it's just the rebundling effect that people have been talking about for a while. Everything got unbundled because of the streamers, and now they've realized in a very hurtful, painful, expensive way, especially for the likes of NBC Universal and some of the other kind of legacy media institutions, that it's not easy to be unbundled. So you got to hope you can rebundle it. And yes, it's going to have cost them more money than we could ever possibly count to find out that the bundle is the way to do it. But I think it is the only way to do it.
It is. The bundle is the way.
Yeah.
And before we get off here, just to follow up to the National Toy Hall of Fame story, the National Toy Hall of Fame inducted these 3 toys this year: My Little Pony, Transformers, action figures, and the Phase 10 card game. Never heard of the Phase 10 card game, but My Little Pony was a finalist actually 7 times before finally getting in this year, so good for the ponies over there. All right, and that'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in to the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a ton more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get signed up at thehustle.co/email and throw us a follow on Instagram at The Hustle Daily. We will see you tomorrow.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael Calore, Director of Consumer Tech and Culture at Wired, here with my colleagues, senior writer Lauren Good.
Hello.
And Wired contributor Zoe Schiffer.
Hey, everyone.
We're here to tell you about our new podcast, Uncanny Valley, a show about the people, power, and influence of Silicon Valley.
Every week, we get together to talk about how technology and culture from the Valley is influencing our everyday lives.
We dig into questions like, will we ever get our privacy back? Is OpenAI for real? And how are Silicon Valley billionaires impacting U.S. elections?
The first episode of Uncanny Valley comes out on October 31st. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.